43 place cards, hand-lettered by me, in the ink I'd been using for 12 years, the same warm copper that shows up on the thank you notes and the wedding invitations and the birth announcements I've made for people all over this city. Each card took 4 minutes. That's the real time, not the romantic version. 4 minutes of real attention, of keeping the nib angle consistent and the ink flowing and the spacing right. And when it's done, the name on the card feels different from a name printed by a machine. It carries weight in a way that has to do with the time spent. 43 people's names, 4 minutes each. That's nearly 3 hours of work, which I did over the course of 2 evenings the week before the party, at my studio work table, with the window open and a cup of tea going cold beside the inkwell, the way it always does when I'm working well. My name was among them. I wrote it myself, the same care, the same 4 minutes. Renata Voss, the slight forward lean, the V handled in the way I developed over the years, because a capital V is a deceptively difficult letter, and most people get it wrong. I wrote it for table 1. Diane put it at table 7. I found that out 2 hours before the guests arrived, when I walked into the venue to check that the flowers were right and the lighting matched the specification I'd submitted 3 weeks prior, and I stopped at the table arrangement with the particular stillness of a person who has found something exactly as wrong as she suspected it might be. My name, table 7, in the back corner, next to the butter dish and my nephew's booster seat. The card was in my own handwriting, because I had written every single one of them. I took out my phone. I photographed the card where it stood, then the table 7 arrangement as a whole, all 5 names in their places. Then I photographed the room, wide shot, the full geometry of it, table 1 near the entrance with its clear sightline to the dance floor, table 7 at the back where the service doors were, and the noise from the kitchen would carry. Then I went to find the box of cards I'd left with Cecily the day before. By the time the first guests arrived, every name in that venue was in a different seat. Every single one. The evening that followed was not what Diane had planned, but the part she never understood, standing there in the receiving line greeting people she'd arranged and rearranged in her head for weeks, was that she was standing inside something I had built, and the building was still entirely mine to rearrange. Before I take you back to how all of this started, subscribe. Right now, this channel is for the person who makes the thing, does the work, shows up on time, and still gets put in the corner. Hit subscribe, then come back, because the way I rearranged that room took 6 hours and a very steady hand, and it is worth every minute of this story. My name is Renata Voss. I was 32 that year, and my work is letters, specifically, the kind of letters that exist in that small, formal space between art and communication, the kind you notice before you read them, the kind that make a table feel like a deliberate thing, and not just furniture with food on it. I learned calligraphy at 19 from a woman named Edith who ran workshops out of her kitchen on Saturday mornings and charged $40 for 3 hours and the use of her nibs. She was 71 and had the hands of someone who'd spent 50 years in conversation with paper, the particular smoothed calluses that form on the middle finger and the ring finger when you hold a pen the right way for decades. She used to say that the hand follows the eye and the eye follows the spirit. That sounds like something from a fortune cookie, but turns out to be true if you work with it long enough. I was not immediately good. I want to be honest about that, because I've noticed people like to tell the stories of craft as though the talent was always there, waiting. Mine wasn't waiting. Mine was hiding. I spent my first 6 months producing letters that looked like a nervous person had attempted to copy someone else's handwriting in bad lighting. Edith never once suggested I quit. She would look at whatever I'd made, find the one thing that was starting to come right, and say, "That part, do more of that." Over time, the part that was coming right got larger, and the part that wasn't got smaller, the way it always works if you show up consistently. By the time I was 25, I had a proper studio, a space in an old textile building with long north-facing windows, and a wide work table I'd saved 2 years for. I took commissions. Weddings, anniversary parties, corporate events, the occasional restaurant that wanted menus worth keeping. I developed my own style over those years, the slight forward lean, the way I handle the capital R at the start of a name, the copper ink I mixed myself to a specific warmth that doesn't quite match anything commercially available. People who know calligraphy can recognize my work from across a room, which is something I'm proud of in a quiet way. I had a wait list. I was, by any reasonable measure, doing exactly the thing I'd meant to do with my life. Marcus found me through a commission. He was planning his sister's wedding, acting as de facto event coordinator because his sister was overwhelmed and he was organized, and someone had given him my name. He came to the studio to look at samples, tall and careful, asking the right questions. He stayed 2 hours. He came back the next week, officially, to drop off the final word list, and asked if I wanted to get coffee after. We married 3 years later. Small ceremony, 40 people, letterpress invitations I designed and printed myself on a rented press, which is one of those things that sounds romantic and is actually 2 days of exhausting manual labor. His family was warm and close-knit and took a while to fully open to me, which I understood. I was the quiet one who worked with her hands. His brothers were loud and easy, the kind of men who immediately fill a room. His mother, Josephine, was proper and private and had decided things about me within the first 6 months that I've never fully been able to revise. Not unkind, just decided. I was Marcus's artistic wife, the calligrapher, the one who did the cards. Josephine's version of me was fixed, and I'd made peace with it mostly. When she introduced me to new people, she'd say, "Renata does beautiful work," as a complete sentence, the way you'd describe a piece of furniture rather than a person. I learned to respond without wincing. You can make peace with a lot of things if you understand they aren't going to change. Diane came into the picture when Marcus's older brother Elliot married her, 4 years into our marriage. She was 38, an event planner by profession, which in retrospect explains everything about what happened. Event planners develop a specific relationship with the spaces they work in. They see a venue the way a conductor sees an orchestra, something to direct, to impose vision upon, to reorganize according to the outcome they've already decided on. Most of the time, this is exactly what clients want. The problem comes when the event planner forgets whose event it is. Diane was good at her job. I want to say that clearly because I am trying to be fair. She understood timing and logistics and vendor relationships. She had opinions about centerpiece height and whether chairbacks should be covered, and her opinions were usually correct. She ran Elliot's firm's holiday party every year, and the invitations were beautiful. Not my work. She had another calligrapher, someone she'd used for years, and she made that clear early on, in a way that was technically about professional loyalty, but communicated something else underneath. She offered to handle our 10th anniversary party during a Sunday lunch at Josephine's. Not offered exactly. She mentioned it as a thought, and then as a plan, and then as an arrangement, across 3 consecutive family gatherings, until the momentum of it was so established that declining would have felt like the aggression rather than the assumption itself. Marcus thought it would be nice. He thought it was a gesture of family connection, Diane using her skills for us the way I used mine for others. He was thinking about it from the outside, from the part that looked generous. I was thinking about it from the inside, from the part where another event planner was about to make decisions about something that had my name on it. But I said yes. I handed over the logistics, the venue coordination, the catering dialogue, the timeline. I kept what was mine, the paper goods, the invitations, already designed, the menus, and the place cards, 43 of them, which I would letter myself, which I'd been looking forward to, as the part of the party I'd actually get to do with my hands. "Of course," Diane said, when I laid this out. "That's the whole point of having you involved. Nobody does the paper better." I trusted that. I handed over the event. It is worth saying here that over the following months, the parts of the party Diane managed were genuinely well managed. The venue she chose was right. The flowers were exactly what I would have chosen. which I know because when Marcus showed me the mock-ups, I changed nothing. The menu was excellent. I said so. I meant it. None of that is in dispute. Where it went wrong was the seating. Seating is the architecture of a party. Where you place people determines what conversations happen, which relationships deepen, who feels seen, and who feels managed. A good host knows this instinctively. A controlling one uses it deliberately. Diane sent me the seating chart 6 days before the party. A PDF, a tidy grid, 43 names sorted by table number. I opened it at my studio work table with the copper ink drying on a commission beside me, and I read through it twice. Table 1, Marcus's parents, his 2 brothers and their wives, his 3 closest friends from university, the ones who'd been at our wedding and still sent cards at Christmas. Tables 2 through 6, a logic I had to trace before I understood it. Diane's college roommates at table 2, close to the center, her event industry colleagues at 3, Marcus's work team at 4 and 5, his extended family at 6. Table 7, my name, my sister Petra. My 6-year-old nephew, who had not been on the original guest list, but appeared here as seat number 3, 2 of Marcus's younger cousins, 12 and 14, and a woman named Carol, whom I cross-referenced against the master list 3 times before finding her listed as Elliot's second cousin, once removed on his father's side. I'd been arranged at the children's table, at my own anniversary party, with a 6-year-old, 2 teenagers, and a woman I'd never met. In the back corner of a room I had sent 43 hand-lettered invitations into the world to fill. I closed the laptop. I went back to the commission beside me and finished the letter I was in the middle of, because the ink doesn't wait, and the client's deadline was real. I rinsed the nib, I capped the ink, I cleaned the nib a second time. Then I called Marcus. I read him the chart line by line. He was quiet for a long time after table 7. "The table near the window," he finally said, the way people repeat something when they're trying to find a handle for it. "The table with my sister and a 6-year-old, I said, not correcting, just completing. "I'll call Diane." "All right. Renata." He paused. "I should have looked at this before she sent it to you." "I'm sorry. You didn't know to look," I said. "Now you know." He called Diane. She had reasons. "The table arrangement made sense for flow," she said. Table 7 was near the window and had a lovely aspect, and she'd thought about the energy of a children's corner, giving the evening a warmer family feel. She'd given it a great deal of thought. Marcus called me back with this summary, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of a man who has just been told something he doesn't fully believe. "She thought about it a great deal," he said. "Yes," I said. "I heard. I can push harder." "Don't," I said. "I'll fix it." The quiet he gave me then was the right kind. He trusted me the way good partners trust each other when they've been together long enough to know what that word actually means. He waited. I had 6 days and 43 place cards to letter. I want to be honest about those 6 days because people imagine this kind of plan as cold, premeditated, revenge in the strategic sense. It wasn't that. I was not plotting across a war room. I was going to work every morning, finishing commissions, eating lunch at my work table, going home in the evenings. In the time between those things I lettered place cards, 4 minutes each, 43 names, and I thought about the room I had been given, and the room I was going to give back. But somewhere in those 6 days, I also sat with a question I hadn't asked myself directly before. Why had I said yes to Diane taking over the party in the first place? Not the surface reason, which was family peace, the real one underneath. The real answer was that I'd been managing Josephine's version of me for 8 years, Marcus's artistic wife, the one who did the cards. That version had a specific ceiling. It was politely impressed by my work and utterly uninterested in the parts of me that didn't fit the corner of its frame. I'd learned to exist inside it, because stepping outside felt like starting a fight nobody wanted. Diane's seating chart was the same frame, drawn by a different hand. "You belong in the back. Here's a window so you can't complain about the view." The place cards were the end of the rental. Not loudly, Just finally, 4 minutes per name, 43 times, with a hand that knew exactly where each one belonged. The lettering itself was steadying. That's something people don't understand about handwork unless they do it. When everything around you is complicated and uncertain, the act of making something precise with your hands brings a kind of clarity that nothing else does. You can't hold anxiety and a loaded nib at the same time. The hand has to be steady, the eye has to be clear. The 43 cards were better than any I'd made in years, I think, because I was making them with everything in my chest and nowhere for it to go, except down through the nib and onto the paper. My sister Petra called on Thursday, 2 days before the party. She'd received her own invitation to table 7, the original one Diane had sent, and she was cheerful about it in the way Petra is cheerful about everything. "I'm at the kids' table," she said, "with your nephew. Should be chaotic. You might be somewhere else," I said. A pause. "Renata, the place cards aren't set yet." Another pause. Longer. Then, very carefully, "Are you doing what I think you're doing?" "I'm setting the cards," I said. "They just need to be right." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Put me wherever you want. I trust you completely." And then she laughed. The Petra laugh. The one that starts low and builds. The one I've been listening to my whole life. "I love you so much." "I know," I said. "The cards will be ready Friday." I finished them that evening. By lamplight. The last 6 names careful and exact. The copper ink drying in lines I knew were right, before I looked at them. I slid each card into its glassine sleeve, set the sleeves in the box, closed the box. 43 names, 4 minutes each, every one of them where it belonged. Friday afternoon, I drove to the venue. I had a standing access arrangement, one of the things I'd been careful to establish when Diane took over the planning, that I would have the ability to come and go as I needed for paper setup. The venue manager, a woman named Cecily who had been coordinating my access to the space for 3 separate events over the years, knew me by name and waved me through. I told Cecily I needed 2 hours to set the place cards. She nodded and offered me tea and went back to her office. The room looked beautiful. I have to say that first because it was true, and because fairness matters more to me than the story I'd rather tell. Diane's flowers in low arrangements that kept sightlines clear across the room, the lighting adjusted to exactly the warm amber I'd specified in my notes 3 weeks prior, the tables with their linen, the chairs with their covered backs, the stemware catching the late afternoon light in a way that made everything look like a memory before it had even happened. I found the event folder on the coordinator's table, the seating chart inside, 43 names on a printed grid. I photographed it. I set it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I took my box from its bag. 43 glassine sleeves, each one protecting a card that had taken 4 minutes and 12 years to make. I want to tell you what the next 2 hours felt like, because I think people imagine this moment as something dramatic, the music-swelling version of the scene. It wasn't. It was very quiet, just me and the room, and the slight sound of the envelopes opening, and the cards being placed, and lifted, and placed again. I moved through the tables methodically, the way I move through any job, assessing each placement before committing to it, stepping back to look at the whole. I moved my name to table 1 and took the care to angle my card so it caught the light from the left, which is where the main chandelier was focused. Small thing, I just wanted to see it right. I moved Diane's colleagues forward, not backward, because they'd done nothing to deserve the back of the room. I moved my guests, the ones she'd put in the back half, to the center tables where the conversation would carry, and the service would come first. I kept the logic she'd built where it worked, and I changed it where it didn't. And Diane. Her card I placed at table 7, in the seat she had assigned to me, near the window. Lovely aspect. Younger energy, as she'd described it. I set it straight, adjusted the fold so it stood at the same angle as every other card in the room. I stepped back. I looked at the room. It was right. The whole room was right now. The way a sentence is right, when you finally find the word that belongs in the space where the wrong one was. I put the empty glassine sleeves back in the box. I left the original seating chart untouched in the event folder. I thanked Cecily on the way out and drove home. At 9 o'clock that evening, I called Marcus. "The place cards are set," I said. "How are they?" he asked. "They're right," I said. He didn't ask anything else. He trusted me. Elliot came to find me during the appetizers. He had the look of a man who'd had a short conversation with his wife in the past 20 minutes and was still processing what it meant. "Renata," he said carefully. "The seating seems to have changed." "It did," I said. "I needed to adjust a few things." He looked at me. He had Diane's particular skill for reading a room, which made sense given how much time he'd spent around her. He read this one correctly, and he knew it. "She worked hard on this," he said. "I know," I said. "The flowers are beautiful. The food is going to be excellent. The venue is right. I adjusted the seating because it wasn't correct. Everything else is hers, and it's good, and she should be proud of it." He nodded slowly. The nod of a man who understands that there is no version of this where he advocates for his wife without confirming what she'd done. "He is a fair man, Elliot. He chose fairness. Enjoy your party," he said, and went back to his table, which was table 2, where I'd left it, because he'd done nothing to deserve being moved. Marcus made a toast at dessert. He'd written it out on a card that morning. This man who plans things, who came to my studio years ago with a word list on a sheet of paper and stayed 2 hours asking questions. He stood up, and the room went quiet, the way rooms do when someone is about to say something real. He talked about 12 years. He talked about the studio where he found me, about the morning he came back the second week with the word list as an excuse, about the invitations I'd printed by hand for a wedding attended by 100 people who never knew that the paper they held in their hands had been made by the woman who would become his wife. He said that everything worth having in his life had started with me paying attention to how things should look and feel and land. He said that a person who spent their days giving other people's important moments the weight they deserved was the kind of person worth spending all your moments with. He didn't know about the place cards yet. He found out later. We drove home at 11:30. The kind of quiet that belongs to the end of a long day done right. At home, in the kitchen, still dressed, I showed him the photograph on my phone, Diane's original seating chart, my name at table 7. He looked at it for a moment, then at me. "You were at table 1 tonight," he said. "Yes, with my mother." She was very complimentary about the lighting. He was quiet for a moment. "You moved Diane to 7. The table was lovely," I said, "near the window." She thought about it a great deal. The laugh that came out of him was the real one, the deep surprised one that means something has found him in a place he wasn't guarding. He laughed for a full 10 seconds, which for Marcus is the equivalent of a standing ovation. Then he held my hand across the kitchen table, and we sat there for a while without needing to say much else, because 12 years is long enough to know that sometimes the right thing to say is nothing, and the right thing to do is sit in the good quiet of a thing done exactly right. He didn't know about the place cards. I want to be clear about that because people ask. I didn't tell Marcus what I'd done on Friday. I didn't tell him that evening, or Saturday morning while we dressed, or in the car on the way to the venue. This was mine to do and mine to carry until it was done, and telling him would have meant asking him to carry it with me, which would have meant putting him between his wife and his brother's wife before the night even started. He deserved to walk into the party the way the guests walked in, surprised by a room that was right, having had nothing to do with making it right. Some gifts work best when the recipient doesn't know what went into them. Marcus knew something, in the general way he knows things, which is that I was steady in those 6 days, in the particular way I get steady when I've made a decision and am working toward it. He didn't ask. He trusted me. That trust is the thing I keep coming back to when I think about that week. Not the seating chart, not the place cards. The trust. 12 years of building something together where the other person's steadiness is enough information, where you don't need the full picture to know the picture is right. That's what an anniversary is, really. Not a party, Not a seating chart, just the evidence, accumulated over years, that you chose the right person to be steady with. Saturday arrived the way event days always do, faster than expected and slower in the minutes that count. I wore a dress I'd bought in February and forgotten about until that morning, the color of old parchment, which is a color I love in the way people love things that feel like home. Marcus, when he saw me in it, said, "You look like you," which is the best compliment he gives, and the one I keep. The guests arrived. Cecily's team moved them through the reception area and into the dining room in that particular managed drift that good event staff creates, everyone finding their seat without feeling herded. I watched from near the entry, Marcus beside me, his hand at the small of my back, the way it goes when he's proud of something and wants me to know without making a speech about it. The first person to look confused was Diane's colleague Francesca, who found herself at table 4 instead of table 2, looked at her card twice, glanced around the room, and then sat down with the slightly puzzled grace of a person who has decided not to make a thing of it. In events, Francesca worked in events, you learn very quickly that reacting to seating surprises is worse than accepting them. The first person to look genuinely delighted was my friend Lena, who had been assigned to the back of the room in Diane's arrangement and found herself instead at table 3, directly beside Marcus's university friend Simon, who she'd asked me about at every gathering for 2 years. She found the card, looked up, found me across the room, and did a face I can still picture, something between gratitude and disbelief, and a kind of wonder that I'd managed it. I gave her the smallest nod. That was everything. My sister Petra, who'd been at table 7 in both arrangements because she genuinely didn't mind, found herself at table 3 as well, across from Lena, and they'd always liked each other enormously, so that worked out in its own way. Josephine, Marcus's mother, found her card at table 1 and settled into it with the particular satisfaction of a woman who always expected to be at table 1 and is pleased when the world confirms her expectations. She caught my eye as I took my own seat and gave me a slight nod, the kind she reserves for things she considers properly done. Coming from Josephine, it was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Diane found her table at 7 minutes past 6. I noted the time because I'd been waiting for it, the way you wait for the moment in any piece of work when you find out if it holds. She stood at table 7 with her place card in her hand. She read it once. She looked at the table arrangement around her, the cousins who'd found their cards and sat, Carol already in conversation with Elliot's colleague across from her. Then she scanned the room, slowly, the systematic scan of an event planner, understanding that the grid she memorized had been replaced. Her eyes found me across the dining room. I was seated at table 1, between Marcus's mother and his oldest university friend, James, and I looked back at Diane with the genuine ease of a person who had done something difficult and done it right, and was now having her anniversary party. I smiled, not triumphant, just present, just here, at the right table, in the room I'd helped build. She looked at me a long moment. Something moved in her face, a sequencing of expressions too fast to fully read, but ending somewhere that was not what I expected. Not anger, something more like recognition. Then she looked back at her card. She sat down. She did not make a scene. I will give her that completely. She sat at table 7, and she ate her dinner, and she was gracious to the 12-year-old cousin on her left, and to Carol on her right, and she kept her face professional, in the way good event people keep their faces when the job goes sideways. She is very good at her job, even the part of her job where something has gone sideways. Elliot came to find me during the appetizers. He had the look of a man who'd had a short conversation with his wife in the last 20 minutes and was trying to decide what it meant. "Renata," he said carefully, "the seating seems to have changed." "It did," I said. "I needed to adjust a few things." He looked at me for a moment. Then, quieter. "She worked hard on this." "I know," I said. "The flowers are beautiful. The venue is right. The food is going to be excellent." I adjusted the seating because it wasn't correct. Everything else is hers and it's lovely. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he nodded, slow and a little tired, the nod of a man who has understood something he'd rather not have needed to understand. "Enjoy your party," he said, and went back to his table. Marcus made a toast at dessert. He talked about 12 years, about the studio where he found me, about the invitations I'd printed by hand for a wedding attended by 100 people who didn't know the paper they were holding was made by the woman who would become his wife. He said that everything worth having in his life had started with me paying attention to how things should look and feel and land on the person receiving them. He didn't know about the place cards. He found out later, at home, when I showed him the photograph of the original seating chart and told him what I'd done. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You sat her at table 7. I did. With the 12-year-old. The table was lovely," I said. "Near the window. She thought about it a great deal." He laughed. "The real one. The one that comes from somewhere deep and surprised." Then he held my hand for a while, and we didn't say much else, because sometimes the right thing to say is nothing. Diane did not apologize. I want to be honest about that, because I've told you other stories where people came around, and not every story ends that way, and this one doesn't, not fully. 3 days after the party, I got a text from Elliot. Not a call, a text. The party was beautiful. Good job on the cards. That was all. No mention of the seating. No mention of what had happened. The specific compression of a message from a man who had understood everything and decided that the understanding was enough. I wrote back, "Thank you for being there," and left it at that. Diane sent me a message 10 days after to a shared family chat, forwarding a photo that Josephine had taken at the party. Marcus and me at table 1, his hand on my shoulder, the flowers in their low arrangements behind us, the light doing exactly what I'd asked it to do. She added, "Beautiful event." 2 words. She's in marketing, event planning. She understood exactly what 2 words meant as a message. I looked at it for a while. Then I added a heart react and moved on with my morning. Here is what I've made of that. An apology that doesn't come is not a wound you're owed. Diane made a choice about a seating chart. I made a choice about the place cards. We've both lived with what we chose, and the living has been its own kind of conversation. She and I exist now the way we existed before, which is carefully. Family events, cordial exchanges, the managed warmth of 2 women who have understood each other completely and decided to leave it at that. She does not offer to plan things for me. I do not offer to do the paper goods for her events. We have established, without saying a word about it, a clean border between what is hers and what is mine. That is not a friendship, but it is workable. And workable, in a family you're going to be part of for the next 40 years, is not nothing. Lena and Simon have been together for 14 months now. She sends me a text every few weeks that says something like, "I still think about those place cards. I always write back the same thing. I know how to read a room." She sends back a laughing face. We've stopped explaining the joke to Simon because some things are just ours. The place cards from that party are in a box in my studio. I kept all 43 test cards, the practice versions I'd made to work out the spacing before committing to the good paper. They sit in a wooden box on the shelf above my work table, and every time I start a new commission, I see them. They remind me of what Edith used to say, and of what the party taught me that her saying never quite had. The hand follows the eye follows the spirit, and the spirit, if you've been paying attention for long enough, knows where every name belongs. Before I go, subscribe to this channel. Not for me, for yourself, because if you've ever done the real work and been given the back corner as your reward, you know the back corner is not the verdict. It's just a seat someone put your name on, and names can move. Here is the one true thing from all of it, plain and without ceremony. The person who makes the thing has the most intimate knowledge of how it works. The calligrapher knows every name. She has written all 43 of them. She has given each one the 4 minutes it takes to put a person down on paper with the weight they're owed. She knows the names better than the event planner who sorted them by proximity to her own table. And when the names are wrong, she can fix them, quietly, with a steady hand. The night before, while the room holds still and nobody is watching, the room was mine. It had always been mine. I just had to remember to walk back in. My name is Renata, and at my anniversary party, I sat exactly where I belonged.